This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of Monday, December the 9th, 2024, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. In the interest of speed, I'm not going to spend much time introducing our guest this week. Josef Newgarden is one of only 6 drivers in the history of the Indianapolis 500 to win in 2 consecutive years. With victories in 2023 and 2024, he still has a shot at an unprecedented three-peat. He's just 33 years old and in the prime of his racing career, so he also has an excellent shot at a 3rd IndyCar Series championship. He drives for Team Penske, which I think we can safely say is the most dominant IndyCar racing organization of the last 50 years. Newgarden doesn't take his hands off the steering wheel when he leaves the cockpit of his number 2 Chevy. He enjoys being a very hands-on caretaker of his career, business interests, and financial life. As he says in his interview this week, maybe I'm just too type A, but I want to know where every dollar is. That includes tracking his philanthropic efforts, sourcing new merchandise, and, as we're going to cover in great detail this week, managing his investment portfolio. A lot of us are comfortable hiring an advisor to handle that work. After Newgarden had a bad experience with an advisor early in his career, he dedicated himself to mastering investment strategy for diversified growth holdings. He does his own research, handles his own trades, and, according to Newgarden, does quite well when he pits himself against the S&P 500. So I wanted to pick his brain about his approach. And we also chat for a few minutes about his plans to create a nonprofit for philanthropy next year, as well as introduce a new line of merch. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Josef Newgarden, driver of the number 2 car for Team Penske in the IndyCar Series, and as of May, a 2-time winner of the Indianapolis 500. And in fact, in about an hour today, which is December the 4th, the latest incarnation of the Borg-Warner Trophy will be unveiled with Josef's face in the spot for the 2024 victory. Congratulations.
That's a lovely intro. It's great to be here. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
As most folks know, the faces on the trophy are sculptural and made individually by an artist. Have you seen your face for 2024 yet?
I've seen photos of it. I've seen the model. They make a full-scale model. The artist, Will Barrand, he's incredible. I've been to his facility where he makes this. He does these incredible live sculptures that are real-life size. He's done them for presidents, Yankees, all sorts of crazy stuff. And he does this for the Borg-Warner Trophy, which is one of the most impressive trophies in sport. If you don't know about it, you should definitely check it out. But I saw last year's. I don't think this year's is going to be that different, but there's always little cues, right? You know, I age a little bit. Maybe my hair is a little different.
That's why like the creases around the eyes are going to get a little deeper.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, they'll capture anything. Maybe I start wearing glasses. I didn't do that year over year, but it is fun to see the differences if you win it multiple times.
Have you actually seen it on the trophy yet?
Not yet. I think they're saving that for in about an hour from now. So it'll be exciting.
Well, hopefully it's not a shocking reveal for you. The first time I became aware of you as an IndyCar driver, or at least as a driver, you know, with a personality and somebody with a backstory, was in 2014 when you were still with Sarah Fisher, Hartman Racing. You were 23 at the time. And Sarah told a story about how you and Danny Klotz, a team mechanic, were driving through Bargersville on your way back from Sweetwater Lake, and you saw someone on the street who was wearing an IndyCar shirt, and you stopped. Do you remember that?
I do remember this. I've completely forgot about this story. I've not been prompted. I did not know that you were going to ask this question. I've not thought of this in years, but that was my rookie season in IndyCar. I was just excited to be on the ground floor, if you will. Like it's you know, seems impossible to just get a ride in the top level series. But yeah, Danny Klotz, he was one of the mechanics on the team, and we were coming back from filming something with NBC at this lake, and we saw someone on the side of the road that had an IndyCar shirt on, and we just stopped and basically talked to him for 10 minutes. And, you know, when you're young, you're like, I'm going to do something like this. And I would still do something like that today. But that was like one of my first experience of being part of something bigger that you never thought you'd be a part of. And they appreciated it. So it's just kind of, it's a fun position to be in, that you're at professional level of sports and there's someone that enjoys your sport. You can make a difference by just stopping and talking to them.
I was going to ask you, do you feel like that is something you would be comfortable doing today?
Oh, yeah. I love when I see people. I don't approach them saying like, hey, this is who I am. But if they recognized me, then that's fine. But I would just basically acknowledge if they had a shirt on or if they were supportive of IndyCar, and I'd love to see that. A lot of the times, if they're supporting IndyCar, they'll know my involvement, but I absolutely love seeing that. And I've seen a lot of growth in our sport recently, especially in Nashville, where I live now. That's where I'm from. Moved back there 5 years ago with my wife, and have just seen a great expansion. And I think our trajectory of our sport right now is in a really great place and has a lot of room to run, rightfully so. We had quite a dip in our sport with the split in the mid-1990s. And now, we're getting a lot of traction, and I think we're in a prime position to grow substantially in the future. So I've noticed it. I see more IndyCar fans. Like, people recognize us more when you get on the airplanes. Not that I want that. I don't want to be recognized. But when you are, you can see the actual development of your sport in real time, and see the acknowledgement is just a way of seeing your sport progress, really.
Do you go to the store?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
So you're like, I guess, in the suburbs of Nashville.
Yep.
So you go to the store, you're in the checkout line, it's comfortable, everybody's cool.
Yeah, I think being a professional race car driver it's a great mix where when you're at the racetrack, especially when you have the fire suit on, you're very famous in that environment. But when you step outside of the racetrack, you're really, for the most part, just normal person, and you don't have a crazy elevation of fame. And I think it's a really nice mix because you get to live a normal life. I get recognized every now and then, especially in places like Nashville or Indianapolis, for sure here. But for the most part, we just live a very normal life like everybody else. So it's a really great mix. You get that notoriety and maybe blast of too much confidence from people at the racetrack, but then you get left alone for the most part when you go home.
So a decade later, here is another off-track event that informed my image of you. So a few days after your Indy 500 victory this year, you appeared on Last Call, the CNBC network show that focuses on financial markets. And I'm thinking you must have been in New York with IndyCar to ring a bell somewhere for some market.
Yeah, on the NASDAQ.
But the host of the show interviewed you for several minutes about your interest in investing in the financial markets. And you started talking about how you had recently sold a position in NVIDIA, which specializes in artificial intelligence computing. And I had not seen that side of Josef Newgarden before. And suddenly it was just like someone had put like a different lens in front of my eyes. And I was like, wait, I know that guy. That's a guy that I went to college with. Those are the guys that I knew that went to Wall Street. And it seemed like almost a completely different guy. If you weren't a race car driver, would you be in finance?
Yeah, I think I'd be an equity trader or some sort of strategist in the equity markets, especially the U.S. markets. They're so fun because we've had so many bull markets. And if you can just wait a little bit, of course we have bear markets too, but they don't last long. If you can survive a couple years, we've had tremendous growth in our markets. So I love it. I'm a numbers guy. You brought up the NVIDIA example, and it keeps me entertained and busy when I'm outside the race car. A lot of my time is occupied by my racing career. I mean, it is the bread and butter of my life. It's the number one focus, and really it's my priority. But I have more capacity, and I'm really fortunate that I've been put in this position where I get to compete at a very high level constantly, which I love to do. I love competing, especially racing cars, but it's also a great business. If you're good at it, you're probably going to get paid very well. You're going to be able to put multiple income streams together. And with all that cash flow, you can really create your own business as well. And you can do that in a lot of ways. And for me, equities is just an easy way to do that at home by yourself.
But a lot of guys, they hire an advisor.
Sure.
And they say, here's my money, protect it, make sure it grows a little bit. I get the impression that you are much more hands-on. I mean, for you, it is a business.
Oh, 100%. This sounds silly, but I don't think it sounds silly. I think there should be more financial literacy in the United States. People should be much more in control of their finances. The knowledge is out there. The information is out there for people to learn about it. It's not actually as difficult as people think. And I don't think it's very approachable because we don't talk about money when we grow up a lot. It's kind of a taboo thing, right, in America. And you don't learn about budgeting that well. You don't learn about a business and how you structure things, and you don't want to take it into your own hands. People have a lot of anxiety when you talk about money, and they don't have a lot of control when they're trying to manage it. And I think if you can just establish those principles early for people, anyone can do a great job of managing their own portfolio. Now, I also think advisors serve a great role. I work with an advisor as well. He manages a piece of my portfolio, but the majority of my portfolio, I like to look after personally. And of course, I'm well diversified. I'm not just in equities. There's a lot of other investments that I like to get involved in. But I'm a big proponent of people learning how to manage their finances in a personal way. I think everybody has the capability to do that. Even if you're not financially literate, I think you can get there pretty simply with just a little bit of teaching.
What was your introduction to the markets? Like when I was like in 5th grade, my mom bought me a share of IBM and said, watch this, and gave me like a little pamphlet.
Yeah.
Here's what you do. What about you?
Let me give you my disappointing story with investing. So the crash of 2008, what an opportunity for everybody, right? It was also a scary time. And I was 17 when this fully hit and we bottomed out. And coming out of that, it was actually a very difficult time in my career too, just trying to put the money together to keep racing. I mean, racing is a business. In a lot of ways, that's where I got my training, because it's not like other sports where you can kind of just sometimes show up with your talent and everything else can get figured out. In racing, you got to figure out some serious problems. If you want to race in this championship, it's going to be $1 million. And if you don't come from a blank check, where are you going to find $1 million to go racing? It's like, I have to figure out this problem if I just want to show my talent behind the wheel. So I say all that because it was a tough time, but the market created great opportunities. I had a little bit of cash, and I put about $20,000 into a portfolio at the time. I bought great stocks. I had some solar companies. Apple was probably one of my best investments, especially when it bottomed out. Ford was very low. I think Ford was selling for like $1.20 at the time.
So this is like spring 2009.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah. Really towards the tail end of 2008 is where I was becoming interested in it. And I was kind of dollar cost averaging into 2009. And I held these positions for about 2 years. And everything was growing nicely, and it kind of looked about how I saw the market at the time and what I thought would happen. And then I basically gave control over to a financial advisor when I got my IndyCar contract in 2012. I said, I don't have time to do this. I need to focus on my racing career. I'm telling you, it's so disappointing what happened between 2012 and 2016. And you go, why did I just relinquish that? And why did I give up all the returns I could have had? I mean, I can go back and track what would have been in place, and it would have been much better and more substantial than what this financial advisor did over that 4-year period. So that was a lesson for me that I was going down the right path, and there was a little bit of fear that I shouldn't be working on this while I'm working on this other thing. And at the end of the day, I looked back and I said, I could have managed both.
So 2016, you decide, I need to be more active. I need to actively manage a good amount of this portfolio. And it was a great time to do it because it was the beginning of the first Trump administration, and there was a huge bump.
Look, it was a great run all the way from whenever you want to count the mark, but even 2010 to 16 was a great run. And then we just kept marching forward all the way up to 2020, right before COVID.
Pretty much after W's presidency, it just was up with a couple of...
It was roaring. It was an amazing opportunity. You know, if you were buying at the end of 2008 or the beginning of 2009, as you said, there was so much growth opportunity over that 10-year period. And how anybody should be structured, I think, is long-term. You know, that's what investing is. You know, I'm not day trading. That's not my gig. It's not my sport. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But when you invest into something, typically it's a long-term venture. That's the way I always see it. So a 10-year time horizon is really nothing. If you're 20, what was I at the time? I was 17. And I'm saying I'm going to sit here for 10, 15 years and I'm only going to be 30 by the time I get up the road. I'd be in an amazing position by the time I'm 30. And I think most people can get themselves to that place. So it was just a great lesson for me. I'm still a young guy and I try and use that lesson now. I'm 33 and I still have a lot of opportunity in front of me. And I don't want to make that mistake ever again.
How did you educate yourself on how to trade and how to make good trades?
It was really experience. I have no professional training in it. I didn't go to any sort of school. I don't hold any licenses. I'm not a professional at it by any means. So I don't think you can take my advice, and I should definitely put that out there that I'm not a professional. But through experience, I think you can become quite savvy at anything. Really just through osmosis in a lot of ways from the industry. Like I told you, being in racing is a business, and it teaches you so many principles. And we're fortunate that we're surrounded by so many gifted and talented people that are specialists in different parts of the world, whether it's a marketing position or it's a CPA or it's an advisor, it's a financial advisor. You learn about these crafts from these different people. And if you're just open-minded and you're looking, your eyes are open, you can learn a lot. I basically learned through experience and trial and error.
What would make you comfortable with buying a stock? What one or two things would you look at?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's not like, where's the silver bullet? There's no silver bullet and there's no crystal ball. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. What I do have comfort in is a long-term time horizon. We could go into a recession next year, right? And we could be in that for 5 years, but I'm not trying to position or plan my portfolio around one stock pick for just 5 years. I'm constantly looking, how far out do I need to be looking? And when I diversify the stock portfolio, you have baskets within that. I might look at collection of 5 or 10 stocks and say this is a 5 to 10 year time horizon. And then you should definitely have a large chunk that's looking at 20, 25 years out. So then when you have it mixed correctly, and there's all different ways that you can do this, but you could have it straight equities, especially if you have a long-term time horizon like 20 or 25 years. And you're not going to be concerned if you have the reserves in place and you're positioned correctly, you budget correctly, you're never overextended, you're never over leveraged. I'm not worried about a difficult 5-year stretch. It's just something that you have to continue to work through. And when you're positioned and planned, then I don't worry about it. So I don't look at one stock and go, I'm comfortable just getting this one stock. There's a lot that you have to be looking at. And I think that speaks to diversification. So it's
hard to answer. Is that your strategy, though, your diversification strategy?
100%. And look, you can be pretty heavy in one. You could say, look, I really believe in this growth stock. I just think this is a company that's going to explode over the next 10 years. And we could 10, 50x on this thing. And you could put 20% allocation to that. And I think that's okay. You just have to understand your leveraging and position. But for sure, I'm never going to sell somebody on one stock or one silver bullet. It's just not how it works. And I don't think it's prudent. Certainly not. Warren Buffett wouldn't tell you that.
Do you do any index funds, or are you mostly like single equities?
I like index funds. I think it's it should be a part of your portfolio. I think it's the simplest way for people to get involved. I do tell people this. If you're working with a financial advisor, typically what they're trying to do is to safeguard your money in the tough days and give you solid returns on the good days. But if you're focused on a long-term time horizon, typically you can beat a financial advisor by just tracking an S&P 500 index fund. It's pretty simple. If you want to be a little more aggressive, why don't you go 50% S&P, 50% NASDAQ, and you can have a blend there. I'm telling you, for the most part, you're probably going to do better than most financial advisors, okay? And you don't have to do anything. You dollar cost average. When you're good at budgeting, you put something away every month and you're consistent. You say, this is the day I'm going to put something away and this is how much I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on doing a great job at my job and I'm going to continue to have cash flow coming in. You set it, forget it. You don't have to worry about it.
I dollar cost average through a 401k. Are you just making sure that you are allocating money at specific intervals?
On some parts of the portfolio, absolutely. I have some aggressive positions. I kind of nickname mine. I mean, I have one portfolio, which is my fun one. It's all growth. It's all aggressive. It's an NVIDIA type portfolio, and it's, there's probably 20, 30 positions in there, and some of them are quite heavy. You pick up a couple names that I have true belief in and see if they play out over, a 3, 4, 5 year period. But then I just have an ETF portfolio as well that's just tracking the market and just steadily intervals like I'm talking about. Every month you're putting them away. I got a 529 for my son. I mean, I'm trying to basically maximize any lever or position, which everyone should do. And then there's the other intangibles. Do you want to buy some art? Do you want to buy some real estate? And I think we could have a conversation forever because you can deep dive into the actual picture, the full picture of the portfolio in a lot of ways. And it's so much deeper than just one position, right?
Oh, for sure. How many individual stocks do you think you're in?
I mean, across everything, I would say it's probably around 50
okay,
equity.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Any sectors that you're particularly in favor of right now?
It's so difficult to not like technology. I just don't know how you can't. I think technology is probably going to be due for a correction. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I think we're a little frothy right now. I mean, this has been a heck of a year. We're nearly 30% this year. And it doesn't mean it has to stop, but I think odds are that at some point this is going to correct back. But I love that. I don't ever get worried and say technology is so stretched. I go, look at how stretched technology is. I can't wait until it pulls back. And then I'm coming back in, because if you look at the world, and this is what I recognized in 2018, at least personally, this is why I got into something like Apple. I go, look at Apple. They are changing the way that we operate as individuals in the world. I don't see it going away. And they are the leaders of the pack right now. I think that's why a lot of people are betting on Tesla. It's a bet, I would say. Their valuation is nuts. But people are saying, is this company going to transform the world in 30 years' time? Do they have the IP and the technology that no one else is going to be able to match, and they're so ahead of everybody? That's kind of how I felt about Apple at the time, and it's played out over these last 15 years. So these companies like Microsoft, Google, these giants, certainly you're going to have intervention from the government and how this stuff is controlled and regulated. But I have great confidence that technology is not going anywhere. So I love the opportunities that will be created in that space in the future.
And I mean, given your age, you're 33, I think 34 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have the higher timeline to weather any problems that might come across. I mean, it's like any sort of like zeitgeist changing technologies like artificial intelligence.
Well, this is a great point you brought up. I'm 33. Of course, I could walk up the road tomorrow and be hit by a car and be killed, but I'm not looking at the world that way. I should have a 30, 40, hopefully a 50-year runway in front of me. So I'm in a place right now where I can play a little bit more aggressively. You know, if you're 60 or 70, you're going to position yourself differently. But what I would want for any young individual is the sooner you can learn about this stuff, time is on your side. I mean, you know, Warren Buffett's a pretty famous investor that everybody knows about, but it's why he's, what is he, 96 now? I think somewhere around there. He started so young, and you go, well, how can Warren build this empire that he did? And he basically did it off of just being prudent and making good picks at the right time and staying steadfast and just basic principles. But he did it over 70 years. So the sooner an individual can learn about these principles and how you manage a portfolio, the more chance you have at success, I think, over the long term.
Are you making the trades yourself for your portion of the portfolio, or is it advisor doing all that?
No. I do it myself. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got a online platform.
I use a platform. It's moved around a little bit as they've changed, but yeah, it's nice nowadays. Talking about technology again, it's so simple. I mean, it's at everybody's fingertips, and you know, a lot of these are regulated quite well. I think you can have good confidence in these platforms that you're using, but I don't want to have everything in one place. So I do split platforms too with some of my different funds. I don't have everything in one spot. I just think it's probably a safeguard for me that one goes down really bad, or the whole ship didn't go.
Do you pit yourself against the S&P 500? Do you track yourself against that?
Oh, yeah.
How you doing?
Very well. Very well. I mean, look, I'm not touting myself as some superhero over here, but I mean, the way I look at it is if you're just trying to track against the market, then why don't you just position yourself in the market? If you want to hold equities, then it's pretty easy to just bet into the market. I can do that all day. I'll just buy the ETF. So if I'm going to do something different and something aggressive, here's the thing. I don't think you're going to get rich just betting on the S&P. It's the wrong way to put it. How do you classify rich? How do you classify wealth? I think you'll definitely grow wealth just tracking the S&P, for instance, in an ETF. But I think if you want to gain substantial wealth, you know, if I'm talking about someone, I keep mentioning Warren Buffett, but if you want to get to someone of this size, you cannot just make these granular bets. I mean, you have to get a little more grand with some of your positions. So definitely my fund portfolio or my aggressive portfolio, it has to do substantially better than the market. I know we could talk about this. What is this? We plan on doing 30 minutes, but we could talk about the financial markets forever. I get the feeling
we could talk about it for a long time.
It's fun. I love it. It keeps me so entertained outside the race car.
Let's take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast and my interview with Josef Newgarden about his passion for investing and money management. I wanted to ask you real quick, since we have a limit on our time, about your plans, I believe, next year to start a nonprofit organization. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I started raising money for a couple charities like 5 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. I got linked up with this. The first charity we started with was Serious Fun Children's Network. It was Paul Newman's charity that he started in the 80s. Paul Newman was a big IndyCar guy, obviously a very famous actor. I really fell in love with his mission. He started these camps. He had one camp in Connecticut called the Hole in Wall Gang Camp. And it was just about giving an opportunity for kids to be kids, especially kids that are seriously sick, that can't go to camp. They might be struggling with a serious illness and they don't have the opportunity to go to camp. He set up a camp that they can go to. There's a whole hospital there, and they're specialized to take care of these kids and their families so that they can just be kids. And now they have 30 plus camps worldwide. So I started working with them and raising money. And now, you know, we're 5 years up the road and we're looking at this and we go, you know, we should really have a foundation in place. We should have a 501c3, and I want to make it as transparent as possible. One of the things I dislike is I think they form 501c3s to take advantage of what a 50c3 can offer. That's not what I want to do. I want to be as transparent as possible. I want to have a website. Anything that comes in, every single dollar needs to get tracked. And I want people to see exactly where the money is going at all times. How much are we paying people? How much are you putting on expenses? And how much is actually going to the charities? That's what's important to me. So I just want to have good control over it. I want to have a better mechanism in place where we can not only help the charity that I just talked about, but expand the portfolio, help more missions or causes that are serious to us. So that's what we're going to try and launch in 2025 and hopefully come up with a good campaign to raise money.
And I wanted to ask you about merchandise. I took a look at your merchandise online currently, Josef Newgarden merchandise. You've got some shirts, you've got some hats, you got some autograph stuff. What can we expect next year?
So excited about this. I never really leaned into this space aggressively, but with the growth right now in IndyCar, it's a fun thing to be involved in. I think in the past, people just tried to make standard merchandise. You see any race car driver, any athlete, all their stuff looks the same. And right now we said, look, we're not going to try and make a bunch of money on merchandise, but we want to make stuff that really impacts and builds my brand. People want to wear it. I wanted to make stuff that I want to wear. And it sounds simpler than saying that. Anyone can say that, but you kind of get into this position, you start going down this road and you end up just following suit of what everyone else does. And we said, look, let's really not do that. Let's make stuff that we're proud of. The margins don't have to be crazy good. We're not trying to make this the most profitable merchandise unit out there, but I want to make good stuff that people like. And so next year we have some fun stuff coming. Really custom one-off pieces is what I like. These limited edition collections that you got to wait for, might only be out for a week before everything gets sold out. We want to only make 150 jackets of something really cool.
Is this something that you would do through Team Penske or just on your own with a vendor, with a designer?
We do it ourselves, so we source everything. We basically, figure out all the fulfillment, the marketing, the product production. Everything is through us. Now, Penske also, you could go to Penske and they have their merchandise unit. You go to IndyCar, you go to IMS. There's a lot of streams that people can look through, but we wanted to have our own line and something that we controlled and something that we thought we really liked and people would like.
So the purse for winning the 500 last year, $4.28 million.
Yeah.
That did not all go in your pocket.
I wish it did.
How does that get broken up?
Well, it's a good question. I'm a private contractor. We all are. I'm not employed by Team Penske. I'm not employed by the league. I have my own business and I contract with Team Penske and we all have unique contracts. So our contracts are all negotiated and everybody comes up with their own formula or stipulation on, do they get prize money? Do they not get prize money? If you do get prize money, what percentage of the prize money do you get? And so I'm not going to go into the details of what I have, but you typically see a portion for people anywhere from 20 to 50% is something that people can negotiate on the driver's side.
For the prize?
For the prize money, yeah.
Okay.
That's one specific prize money example is the 500. There's other prize money throughout the year.
Going back to our discussion about investing. So was there a sudden influx of prize money in the investment fund, or are you so disciplined that you kind of drifted in over time?
I'm pretty disciplined. I try and live below my means aggressively. I get to live a lavish lifestyle. I mean, I can be making a fifth of what I'm making right now, and I could still live like a king. So I look at that and I go, well, I'm never going to be close to the threshold of what's coming in, right? So everything just ticks up nicely. When our total revenue for the year and my company goes up, the allocations pretty much stay the same, but they just tick up with it. So this stream is just getting this allocation, this stream is getting this allocation. They all stay pretty similar as far as the mix and the breakdown, but they just elevate. So if it's a big influx or it's a little influx, they're all going to elevate the same way.
Do you manage all of this yourself?
Yeah.
Is that true for everybody, or do people have managers?
Oh, there's people that do not even like to talk about this stuff. They want to find someone they like and have them control it all. I could not do that. I mean, maybe I'm just too type A, but I want to know where every dollar is.
You had a bad crash in Iowa.
Yeah.
Last season. So at the med center, they said you were okay, and then you fainted. And then you went to, is it Mercy One, I think, in Des Moines?
I believe, yeah, that sounds right.
And the test came back fine. Have you had any kind of repercussions from that accident?
Thankfully, no. I got back in the car the next weekend. They really wanted to test me extensively. I mean, they put me through the ringer. I had to really, I don't want to say argue, but it was basically an exercise of how many loops do you want me to jump through? And I'll do every single one for you. And I did that entire week. I got into the car the week later. And thank goodness I've had absolutely zero negative effects.
So, I mean, you deal with mortality all the time. Did that incident bring you any closer to a sense of maybe I shouldn't be doing this for a living? Or maybe, I should have a definite point here where I start to dial back?
That's a good question, but not that one. That one was more of a unique and strange incident. I had this wreck leading the race. We had a part failure, which was, I look back on it and it was so difficult. If we would have just won that race, we would have won the championship that year by a good bit. So it was a disappointing wreck. But, it was a normal wreck. I got cleared by the medical facility, like you said. And then what ended up happening was I had a syncope event, which basically a fainting event. If you're dehydrated, you overheat. It was the second race day of that weekend. It was 90 plus degrees. So I was most likely dehydrated. I got back and I got lightheaded. And when I hit my head on the ground in the parking lot is when I hurt myself. So I didn't look back at that one and go, man, I should really worry about how I'm walking through the motorhome lot. Like it didn't bug me from a racing standpoint. There's a lot worse that could happen. But, we've not to go on and on about it, but we've come so far from a safety standpoint. IndyCar's always been on the cutting edge of it. And with the aero screen now in the car, I look at it and say, how are we driving these cars without this before? So I think we're in a good spot, and I don't have any reservations. You can't have any reservations in this sport if you want to perform at the best.
How long are you going to keep doing the racing?
I'm going to go for as long as reasonable. I think I'm in my prime right now. I do believe that. And I'm not going to force things. I'm going to go. I would love to have another 10, 15 years, but it may be shorter, maybe longer. Time will tell.
Well, it sounds like, financially, you're setting yourself up pretty well.
I hope so. There's definitely the possibility that I'm messing it all up, too. I'm not going to kid myself. Yeah.
Okay. Good luck this season.
Thank you.
And we'll be watching.
Appreciate you.
My thanks again to Josef Newgarden. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in this week's edition of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, during the holiday shopping season, of course, it's all too easy to handle your gift list via Amazon and other giant e-commerce retailers. Dave Lindquist asks local independent retailers about the lengths they will go to make an in-person sale via good old-fashioned face-to-face customer service. Also in this week's issue, Mickey Shuey explores how Mayor Joe Hogsett's office is trying to reorganize the city's economic development apparatus to get a better shot at landing new companies and high-paying jobs. And Daniel Bradley outlines efforts to develop the now quiet State Road 47 exit on Interstate 65 in Boone County. And again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is quite a bit easier to access all of the latest local business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months, just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. And you can't tell me that you don't know someone who would love this as a holiday gift. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ Podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.